What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, and I'm here with the one, the succulent, the only
Gersh1.
And today we're back to answer more questions from you guys in another spine-tingling, enticing video known as For the Greater.
This is a video series where we answer the questions left by you, the viewer. If you have a question for us, just comment down below. Put question in front of your question because we get to those questions first. We've been answering questions about the 40K universe since the beginning of time. Therefore, we're going to answer the question of Clinton Alfonso. If you got to join a Space Marine chapter and you somehow could choose your role, what would you pick? Chaplain, Tech Marine, Apothecary, Librarian, Chapter Master, or do you think you'll end up becoming a Chapter Serf or Servitor? Keep up the great work. Listen to these Q&A sessions have become part of my routine now. They help to flesh out the 40K universe and remind me how vast the lore is.
Very vast.
That's awesome to hear, and that's really why we do this. It's just like, it's supposed to keep people in the hobby. And GW should pay us, because like, you guys are probably spending way more money than you should on plastic minis.
Oh, yes.
Even though most of you guys don't really play the tabletop.
Yeah, but, I mean, if you do, you know how expensive that could be.
Yes.
Quick.
So, personal choice.
Yes. I've always liked librarians. The thought of being a super soldier with like awesome technology, like really defensive and like offensive, and having the ability to shoot mine bullets or fire, that was always like cool. It's like, whenever you want to play something, go big or go home. It's like, why do you want to play a guardsman when you could be a space marine? And not just that, you could be the best space marine, a psyker space marine.
Yeah. It would be cool, too, for you to go through the process of going all the way up to, like, a chapter librarian. I created a 40 facts video not too long ago about the different ranks within, like, a chapter.
Yeah.
And really starting off at the initial, like, almost neophyte level, you really are just like a
grunt.
Yeah, and a librarian in the sense of like you control and watch over all the tomes and the data slates and all that kind of stuff that the chapter possesses.
Right.
They're almost like historians, librarians are, which is kind of cool.
Right. And then it's not always that you start off as a neophyte and you're going to end up as chief librarian.
Right.
No.
Most of them don't make it past the second rank.
Yeah. And that could be through a bunch of things, because just because you're a librarian doesn't mean you're the best of the best. You're always going to be assaulted by warp things, such as the Psych Neuen. You could get, like, surprisingly, there are, like, I guess you could call them diseases, I guess, or, like, viruses or something like that affect psychers specifically. Chaos can use you as a gateway to spew out demons and stuff like that. So it's hard being a psyker.
Yeah. Even though you have an advantage, if Chaos does decide to use you as like a pawn, more than likely they're going to give you boons to like elevate you to Chapter Master, and then once you have that control of a Chapter Master, boom, you're corrupted.
Yeah.
And now you are a servant of Chaos.
And chances are you're probably corrupting your other underlings and whatnot. So
yeah. I would choose Tech Marine, and the reason I like the concept of Tech Marine is just because recently I've been really getting into a binge of like building terrain, so like constructing things and like being the mechanic of the chapter sounds badass.
Before you start working on terrain and stuff, do you do a prayer to your toaster?
Yes, that usually involves a lot of Bridget B, and a lot of tissue. A lot of tissue.
For like paper mache, of course.
Yeah. That's how I prep. Instead of rubbing ointment on the actual like pieces of terrain and tools, I rub it on another piece of tool.
What about you guys?
Yeah. How do you guys? I'm just
Speaking of which, the other day this guy said that when he's doing that, he just lets it hit the floor. What a savage, man.
Yeah, that's gross.
He's like, I don't have time to think about, oh, where's my Kleenex? Where's my sock? He's like, I'm here to enjoy myself, and that's why his carpet's crunchy.
I bet his house smells bad, yeah.
Probably.
I think you have to live alone in order to do that. Or not care about, like...
anything, really.
Yeah. And if that's the case, don't shake that person's hand. Next question.
This one's by Keeter Griffin. Why, when I'm about to head out, I always sniff the air, and the air sniff back. All of ass sudden Peter Griffin shows up and starts making you laugh. You turn around and lock eyes with the uh-oh stinky monkey. Shouldn't have sniffed. That was your last mistake. Peter Griffin points his Raycon brand Bulger towards you. I'm sorry. One last sniff. Family Guy, funny laugh jokes, 2069.
I don't know what that's referencing.
I'm in the dark on this one. But keep doing you, man. Whatever makes you happy.
Yeah, sniffing farts is a weird kink, but if that's what you're into. Because he said sniffing the air, as if you really are sniffing the air. Bringing it back on track. This question comes from Winter Wrath. Are Grey Knight Tech Marines trained in secret on Mars, potentially under the guise of another chapter, due to the fact that their existence used to be hidden? That's a really good question. I don't think I have an answer.
Yeah, as far as I know, I don't think they went, because usually a Tech Marine would go out to like some Mechanicus Forge World or something like that and train under them to know the insides and outs of machinery. But back then, Grey Knights were indeed supposed to be quote unquote secret, to the point that they would conduct exterminatus on certain planets if it came to that point, or just mind wipe people.
Yeah.
But after what was it called?
Gilliman's Return?
Yeah, the Indomitus Crusade. Yeah, the Grey Knights were like, here we are, and I guess they can do whatever they want now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got the codex for it, but I haven't read all of it yet, so I'm not too sure if they cover that in the Tech Marine part.
My assumption is that, like, because you said that back in the day they just killed a bunch of people, like regiments that would fight alongside them, they probably did like the cartel thing, where like the cartel hires an engineer to build an underground tunnel. As soon as the underground tunnel is done being built, so they're probably doing that to like the tech priests. It's like they get a tech priest, they say, hey, you're going to work on a really awesome project for these really awesome space marines, teach them everything that you know. Once the tech marine graduates,
or maybe they just hit the reset button.
Yeah, that could be too. Yeah, depending on like how
their brain is like cognitively functioning.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a good question. Next one.
This one is by Brian B. His question has spoilers for Godblight. So if you guys haven't read it, or if you don't care about spoilers, here we go. Do you think that the Emperor's attack on Nurgle's garden could have freed Isha? So the thing about Nurgle, Isha, the Emperor, Gilliman attaining essentially the Emperor's power through the sword and into his like being, I don't think that's going to have anything to do with the Eldar. Even though I do think like Gilliman owes the Eldar huge, because if it wasn't for Yvraine and the armor that he's got on and everything, like Gilliman would still be in that like near death state. So he literally owes them his life, and in accordance with that, the lives and the hopes of all of the Imperium. Because to resurrect a Primarch is huge. They've got a commander in the military, a huge inspiration, an awesome beat stick. And I think that the attack on Nurgle's garden should be kind of like we're even after this, but I don't think anything's going to come out of that storyline, at least with Isha being freed.
Yeah. Because that's usually what GW does.
Yeah.
Next question comes from the Grand Poobah. Menudo or ABBA?
I don't think I've had ABBA. Do you know
I thought that was a band.
It is.
Yeah.
Dancing Queen.
And Menudo's... who was in Menudo?
Menudo's that other band too, right?
Yeah, but who was the main person from Menudo that like made it big? Is it Ricky Martin?
He was in that?
I feel like he was, because they were kids.
Mm.
Yeah. But Menudo's actually a dish also.
Right.
So music, a dish... It's all over the place.
A way of life.
Yeah. I took an Uber not too long ago, and I was getting driven around the city by this guy named Muhammad, and then he asked me, like, oh, what's your nationality? And I was like, well, I'm Mexican. He's like, oh, why are there a bunch of, like, Mexican flags everywhere? Because it was coming to September 16th, so there was a lot of, like, Independence Day stuff. So then I explained that to him, and then he's like, yeah, Mexican people and because he came from Afghanistan. He's like, we're very, very similar. Like, he goes, did you guys know that pozole is a Middle Eastern dish?
Huh.
And I was like, what? And then he gave it its name, and then he described what it is, and I was like, yeah, that's exactly what pozole is. And then we spent the entire ride just making connections between like the Middle East and Mexico.
And at the end, you guys made a connection, lip to lip, right?
It got kind of racist at the end, so yeah, it was an interesting ride. But yeah, menudo.
There you go.
Next question. I got one from. Ooh, this is gonna be a long one. Araya 816. If all the Space Marine chapters were able to use the same weapon and war gear as the Custodes, how much more efficient at pushing back the enemies of the Imperium do you think they would be? Do you think the Imperium would not be as big of a risk of being consumed by Chaos or the Tyranids? Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, the thing about the weapons of the Custodes is that they're super hard to manufacture, to find all the raw materials to create something of such value. It also takes a long time because essentially everything's master crafted. And as strong and as powerful as they are, I think if you mass produce something in terms of storyline and the flow of the universe, it's a very, like you could give all Space Marines deatomizing weapons, and at the same time, to make the story good, it's not going to be like, oh, well, they killed everything in one fell swoop. No. Some way, somehow, the enemies of mankind will find a way to kind of combat this, and eventually it'll just become what it is now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like, no matter what, if you give something a near impervious armor, there's always going to be a way around it.
Yeah.
There's always going to be something to kind of even the odds. So if you could buff everything in terms of attack power, then I feel like in terms of evening out the odds, everything else would have to bump up their defense in one way or another.
Yeah. And also remember that the body of an Adeptus Custodes is way more powerful than a Space Marine. So kind of the same way where an Imperial Guard soldier couldn't really wear power armor, a Space Marine does not fit to the Adeptus Custodes armor. Mm-hmm. They're bigger, tougher, stronger. I don't know about Primaris, though.
Yeah, I think that's probably closer, so maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of gameplay, like, there's got to be a balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why you have your elite armies and you have your good-at-everything armies, Space Marines.
Yeah.
This one's by Gofaria Rebels. Hello once again. My question is, amongst the 4 Chaos Gods, who would be considered the best strategist? I would assume it'd be Tzeentch, but maybe Khorne.
Or maybe Slaanesh, because it's perfection.
Yeah.
Definitely not Nurgle.
Well, I don't know. Maybe Nurgle's strategy is just to, like, don't think about it and just infect.
That's true. The whole concept of entropy is just kind of attrition, and that seems like what Chaos is doing.
Right.
And it works.
It's working perfectly, yeah.
Yeah. So, all of them. I was thinking about this the other day when I was in the car, not being driven around by Muhammad, but just in the car. That, like, if you actually sit down and think about Chaos and the Chaos Gods, it's confusing. Like, it's the things don't really match up, but that's the whole point.
It's chaos. You're not supposed to understand it.
Yeah. So then when you think, like, oh, well, wouldn't the god of war, a.k.a., like, Khorne, be the one that should be on top for most of the time? But no, like...
He's a verse.
Yeah.
Top or bottom.
Exactly.
It depends on the day.
Mostly power, though. Next question. This one comes from David Graham. Do you think the multiverse exists in 40K? If so, would the Emperor have been aware of it? No, it doesn't.
Yeah. As of right now, there is no other, like, what-if universe, or, like, oh, like, what if the heresy was flipped and you have, like, the loyalists become traitors and the traitors become loyalists?
Yep.
That's questions that, you know, the fan base has always asked. And, like, what if the Emperor never allied with this thing, or what if this happened? But no, even with, like, time travel and, like, shenanigans with the warp, everything's been pretty linear in terms of storytelling. And I think GW doesn't want to dive into that crazy, messy, like, oh, if this happened, how does this affect that, and this and that and that. because as of right now, like they already have a lot on their plate, and they're only focusing on Space Marines for the most part.
Yeah.
So if they were to like add in other universes and scenarios, I think that'd just be too much, and it'd be to the point where we'd never get to certain factions. Like I already feel like the Eldar are getting left out. And if you're adding the multiverse to it, then you're probably going to get a different scenario for the Indominus Crusade, which would mean more releases for the Imperium and whatnot. So I think it's best that they don't do something like that and just leave that as like fan material.
Yeah, and kind of like to piggyback off that, they don't have to do that because the 40K universe itself right now is so like sandboxy.
Yes.
You can create pretty much, because the other day I got asked a question of like, oh, can I include cloning in my homebrew chapter? Technically no, but yes, because it exists. So
Right.
like the boundaries to the 40K universe are already so like far apart and thin that you don't need a multiverse to make things work a certain type of way. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's enough there to keep things going on for a good long time.
Oh yeah. And for you to have the creative freedom to just like put Bridget B as your chapter master. Female Space Marines? What?
This next one is by Al Mac and Cheese. Is cross-seeding a thing for Space Marine chapters? For example, could you mix the green salamander seed with the Space Wolves or Black Templars and Blood Ravens? And if not, ¿por qué?
Yeah, like a giant orgy of Space Marine Primarchs? No.
Yeah. The way that gene seed works with like the physiology and the creation, it doesn't really mesh well. You'll end with some type of mutation or just it not working at all and just killing the what's it? It's not neophyte. The
Aspirant.
aspirant. There you go.
But what's cool about like going back to that whole sandboxy elements of 40K, you could still bend the rules in a way where like a chapter can have multiple battle brothers from multiple
Death Watch.
yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah, and then you could just like you could even expand and say like, no, my chapter is like stuck within a warp storm, so it's really two chapters that now have been reduced to such low levels that they combine and they fight alongside each other. The chapter librarian of one chapter is dead, so now we use the other chapter librarian. Same thing with land. Yeah.
You could always just say that maybe that's why the 2nd or the 11th Legion were expunged, because they were doing gene seed cross contamination and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what created mutations or made them go chaos or made them go rogue or something like that. So you could there's always a way to make it make sense.
Yeah. That's the beauty of 40K. Next question comes from... Do you have one?
This one is by Puby SB. If Caldor Drago is stuck in the warp, what does he eat? I doubt that demon flesh is tasty or healthy, but he's been in there a long time, so he must be munching on something. Peace.
He's the OP character of all of 40K, so he can eat whatever he wants.
Right.
Probably.
I mean, he might be the silver champion of Slanesh.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Slanesh has got to give him something to eat.
I mean, he has how many boobs?
There's like 3 or 4, right?
Yeah, so...
But all on one side, though. And
Right,
they get
yeah.
progressively smaller as you go down.
Until they get so tiny, like, you have to, like...
You gotta, like, do it, like, on your phone, try and make it bigger.
Yeah. The longest the Space Marine has lived without food or water, I think, was like 582 days, and it was, I believe, a Crimson Fist warrior. All of that might be wrong.
Yeah, because retcons and whatnot.
Yeah.
But you also got to remember that Drago doesn't just stay in the warp. He does come out into the material realm every now and then. So maybe he comes out and he's like, food, water.
Like SpongeBob.
Yeah. I need it.
And the time is different in the warp. So, like,
Yeah.
to us, it might be decades or millennia, but to him, it might be, like, a couple hours.
Right. But I could see him chowing down on some, like, of Nurgle's fruit in his garden or something like that.
Pozole.
Yeah.
It's an Arab dish. And those were the questions for today. If you guys have more questions for us, please comment down below. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk tomorrow.
This has been the Sound Alchemist,
Gershwan.
and we are out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.